Hello, all. I have something that I want to read to you. I found it on the internet, probably on Facebook, and I can't find it for the life of me, so I can't really say who wrote it, but if you know, let me know so I can tag them. So this is just basically about the American privilege. So my experiences growing up as a first-generation American have forced me to see this concept from more of a global perspective, fully recognizing that my citizenship and East Coast accent automatically give me a leg up on my Nigerian-born relatives. The reality is that many Black Americans never escape the clutches of American society, neither physically nor mentally, to fully realize the privileges their citizenship carries around the globe. For those of us struggling with this concept, I've compiled a list of many ways through which we benefit from an American first mentality and actively participate in systems that oppress other Black people around the globe. Please hold your privilege until the end. So for starters, American privilege is seeing your nation as default and cultural norms as correct. Americans are normal. Everyone else is different. That includes you Canadians. American privilege is not knowing much about other cultures around the world and not being dismissed as ignorant because of it. American privilege is moving to another country and not having to earn your degree all over again because Western education and credentials are seen as superior. American privilege is having your country be better represented globally in the media. This includes written media, television, art, music, and movies. And when your country is represented in the media, you get an informed, nuanced portrayal. It's an American privilege to have your country portrayed and viewed globally as advanced and modern as opposed to primitive and backwards. American privilege is not having people treat your country, let alone continent, as if it's monolithic. People recognize that New York City and LA are vastly different parts of the U.S., but have a hard time accepting that Africa isn't just one big jungle/wetland. It's an American privilege that most of your population is likely to have a strong, stable, relatively inexpensive connection to the internet, which means that your country is better represented on social media and in digital activism. American privilege is when global platforms are more likely to acknowledge your national traditions, tragedies, celebrations, and rituals, while those of other countries are ignored and or marginalized. American privilege is the misconception that the English language is the global linguistic standard. American privilege is not needing to learn at all much about other countries. People from other countries, however, are forced to learn about your country as a means of survival. American privilege is having net neutrality be a hot button topic while a staggering 60% of the world is still fighting for internet access. American privilege is making up only 4.3% of the global population, but maintaining over 800 military bases in over 70 countries and the U.S. territories. Russia, Britain, and France, on the other hand, operate approximately 30 combined. American privilege is the demand for elaborate pools in our apartment complexes, man-made lakes in the middle of our gated communities, $7 bottled water, and mile-wide water-themed amusement parks, while the rest of the globe endures a devastating water and sanitation crisis. American privilege is being classified as an expatriate or an expat if you choose to relocate to a country other than that of your birth, while people of other countries who relocate to America receive tarnishing labels like migrant or immigrant. American privilege is asserting the belief that the consumption of meat and dairy is unethical, despite the majority of the world suffering from chronic malnourishment. For many people around the world, if not for the consumption of meat and dairy, they would likely starve to death. American privilege is not knowing what it's like to have a war on your homeland. American privilege is expecting people in other countries to speak your language when you travel abroad. American privilege is believing everyone else wants to adopt the American way of life, and therefore Western interference and influence are sort of like gifts. American privilege is assuming everyone wants the USA to help them, and that America is within her right to interfere in the affairs of other nations. American privilege is traveling to places where Black indigenous populations are still being hidden, oppressed, or ethnically cleansed and being treated well. I want to say that again. I feel like I skipped some words. American privilege is... See, now I done lost myself. Okay, yep, I skipped a whole one. Okay, we're going to start back. American privilege is the idea that the West and its laws are the standard for morality. And any country not adhering to these standards is anti-humanity or anti-freedom. American privilege is traveling to places where Black indigenous populations are still being hidden, oppressed, or ethnically cleansed and being treated well. American privilege is access to public benefits. American privilege is having the ability to travel and seek the protection of the U.S. government while abroad. Think LiAngelo Ball and that incident in China. American privilege is having here we go. American privilege is unrestricted international travel. You can thank your blue passport for that. American privilege is having a consumerist culture where the demand for cheap clothing pushes an entire fashion industry into what's known as fast fashion, a global phenomenon where factory workers are vigorously overworked and subjected to dangerous conditions in order to keep up with Western demands. Who doesn't love a good $2 tank top from Forever 21? American privilege is only knowing about global conflicts that directly impact your personal comforts, like increased taxes on the avocados or higher gas prices. Meanwhile, there's about 40 ongoing conflicts around the globe, many of which the American government is directly involved. So, my fellow Americans, the game has been rigged in our favor. This repressive system has been established solely for the purpose of expediting the development of the Western world and is being maintained for your benefit. You, being born in America, inherit a birthright that affords you opportunities that many others could only dream of. The term American dream didn't just pop out of thin air. It is derived from very real, very tangible, very measurable discrepancies between life in the West and life around the rest of the world. As people born into this imbalance, we have two obligations. The first being is to recognize the imbalance, and the second being is to address how we actively contribute to it. When we deny the existence of the imbalance altogether, we not only justify our privilege, but maintain the system that would allow us to continue to benefit from it, making us the oppressors we loathe. Make no mistake, accepting privilege is a painful experience. To accept that you have played a part in the oppression of others, even as you have cried out against oppression, is an unnerving, guilt-ridden experience. Uncovering the hidden relationships of privilege means there's no denying it and there's no avoiding it. This is particularly difficult for American-born Black people, who understandably struggle with being both a party to the oppressed and a party to the oppressors. Grappling with the idea that one can be complicit in the oppression of others while still fighting for their own liberation. But contrary to popular belief, we do not live on a secluded island, and after almost 500 years in this country, we are as American as they come. Our actions affect the rest of the globe just as much as the actions of our fellow Americans. Neither our complexions nor our oppression make us exempt. After all, we know that there's no privilege without oppression, and we know this firsthand. You know? The time to begin recognizing our place in the world as global citizens is now. Not when the rest of the world finally crumbles under our weight. The bad news is, it's going to take a hell of a lot of work on our end. The good news is, everyone benefits in the end, including your privileged ass. Thank you for listening.